city of Taft will pay its former police chief $180,000 in a settlement agreement. McAllen residents are fighting AEP Texas on a new electric substation in their neighborhood, and Texas primary early voting begins today. This is South Texas Midday. I'm Rob Boskamp. Thank you for joining me on this Tuesday, February 17th. Former Taft Police Chief John Landreth reached an $180,000 settlement agreement with the city, resolving a lawsuit he had filed against him last year after his termination. Chris 6 News reports the settlement approved by City Council calls for the city to pay Landreth $180,000 and place a letter in his personnel file withdrawing accusations made against him.
The sad part about all this is the citizens of Taft are the ones that pay. And at the end of the day, that's who pays. The people pay, the citizens pay. The attorneys win, I win, but the citizens lose. And that's with every lawsuit.
That was Landreth speaking with Chris 6. He sued the city following his termination last April after allegations that he made violent threats against city employees and members of city council during a meeting the month prior.
I didn't make it go this direction. I'm fixing to be 60 years old next month. I've never sued anybody until the city of Taft did this.
A key component of Landreth agreeing to the settlement was the inclusion of the letter to be placed in his personnel file that was signed by Mayor Alida Castillo addressing the accusations that led to his termination. Corpus Christi City Council meets today at City Hall at 1201 Leopard Street. On this week's agenda, council members will discuss a resolution supporting the Corpus Christi Army Depot, or CCAD, and urging Congressional and Department of War support for continued operations and growth. Last week, city leaders held a press conference calling for modernization at CCAD with a steady workload for the depot and clearing old debts from unplanned government missions. Council members also are expected to award an $8.7 million construction contract to South Texas Building Partners, Inc. of Corpus Christi for construction of the Northside Aquatic Center in the Hillcrest area in Council District 1 that would be paid with fiscal year 2026 funding available from Bond 2024 and Metropolitan Planning Organization reimbursement. Council members also are expected to receive an update on the city's water supply. Full meeting agenda is available on the City of Corpus Christi's website. As AEP Texas faces record high electricity demand across the Rio Grande Valley, its plan to fortify the McAllen electric grid has been delayed once again by neighborhood opposition. The Rio Grande Valley Business Journal reports that residents spoke out last summer about plans to build a new electric substation on a 5-acre property near the intersection of Buddy Owens Boulevard and North Benson Road. McAllen City Commissioners agreed to reject AEP Texas's plan. Yesterday, those same residents presented the same concerns: noise pollution, health and safety, and a potential decline in property value. Even though the proposed project is now on the south side of Buddy Owens, a temporary smaller substation was rented on land owned by the city for a 2-year stint. The Rio Grande Valley Business Journal is in partnership with KEDT. Beginning today, Texans can begin voting as part of the first step in this year's midterm elections that will ultimately determine who represents them in both the State House in Austin and Congress in Washington, plus a wide variety of important statewide offices. The Texas Newsroom's Blaze Gainey has more on some of the key races voters in these political primaries will see on the ballot when they vote early.
Whether you're voting in the Republican or Democratic primary, there will be a long list of races on the ballot, from Texas governor and lieutenant governor to state lawmakers and local judges. But our U.S. Senate race is definitely drawing the most attention. On the Democratic side, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and State Representative James Talarico are running. Republicans are choosing between incumbent Senator John Cornyn, Attorney General Ken Paxton, and Congressman Wesley Hunt. And with Republicans holding narrow majorities in Congress, these primaries have made national news. The winners will face off in November for the Senate seat, but if no candidate earns more than 50% of the vote this time, who's on the ballot this fall won't be decided until May's runoff elections. I'm Blaze Gainey in Austin.
9 people are on trial this week in what could be the first federal terrorism case associated with Antifa. President Donald Trump deemed the anti-fascist movement a domestic terrorist threat last year. Prosecutors say those charged intended to kill when they shot and injured a local police officer outside a North Texas ICE detention center. But as KERA's Tolawani Osabamwo reports, the defendants still maintain their intentions were to protest.
About a dozen people gathered outside the Prairieland Detention Center in Alvarado the night of July 4th. Prosecutors say they shot fireworks toward the building and damaged property. Minutes later, they say an Alvarado police officer who responded to the scene was shot by someone from the woods. Here's former acting Dallas area U.S. Attorney Nancy Larson speaking to reporters.
It was a planned ambush with the intent to kill ICE corrections officers. Make no mistake, this was not a so-called peaceful protest.
Maricela Rueda was at Prairieland that night. In a phone call from jail, she said she and other defendants were only there to show support for people in ICE custody amid the Trump administration's immigration crackdown.
I heard the shots from afar, and immediately what came out of my mouth is, what is happening?
To the government, the group was an Antifa terrorist cell. The protesters say they weren't involved with any plans for violence. None of the defendants have a history of violent crime. Those conflicting narratives are at the center of a trial this week that could be the blueprint for how the Trump administration targets left-wing violence.
It has been very one-sided on the news, and at this point, the fear is not exactly even what happened that night. It is who they think we are.
Antifa is short for anti-fascist. The government describes Antifa as a network of groups that adhere to anarchist or Marxist ideology and oppose the U.S. government. Trump took the unprecedented step of designating Antifa a domestic terrorist organization in September. But Antifa is not a formal organization, and under federal law, there's also no way to specifically charge people for domestic terrorism like there is for foreign terrorism. Javier De Janon is with the National Lawyers Guild, which has helped some defendants with their legal needs.
It is a political ideology that has seen many iterations, but even modernly, I don't know a modern current 2025 social movement or group that is saying Antifa anymore.
Some defendants and their attorneys have pointed to former Marine Corps reservist Benjamin Song of Dallas as the lone shooter. Indictments refer to him as the group's leader, and court records show several of the guns found at the scene were tied to Song. Ira Yusuf isn't connected with the case, but she says she first met Song and other defendants while volunteering. She says they're committed to social justice, but they're not violent.
They're not evil people who are trying to hurt anyone. They're not evil people trying to shoot at cops. They're not evil people trying to bring anything down or anything. They just want to help people.
The case could also set a precedent for what kind of speech or actions are treated as terrorism. Daniel Sanchez Estrada wasn't at Prairieland on July 4th, but he's accused of dropping a box of zines or DIY published booklets and other items at a friend's apartment in Denton to conceal incriminating evidence. Acting U.S. Attorney Larson called it insurrectionist material.
One of them was entitled Organizing for Attack, Insurrection, Anarchy.
But Sanchez Estrada's family and supporters say owning anti-government literature isn't evidence of a crime. A Fort Worth federal jury will have to decide what parts of the narrative they believe. Experts say the decision could affect the prosecution of political violence for years to come. I'm Toluwani Osibamowo in Dallas.
And this summer, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement will play a big role at the FIFA World Cup. KEDT's Joe Michael has more details.
The director of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement says the agency will be a key part of security during the FIFA World Cup this summer. ICE Director Todd Lyons addressed security at a U.S. House committee last week after lawmakers raised concerns about ICE presence at the games, leading to potential wrongful detentions. Arlington's AT&T Stadium and Houston's NRG will both serve as venues for games in Texas. Lyons said ICE will work to ensure safety for athletes, staff, and visitors. For KEDT News, I'm Joe Smichael.
And that is the latest news and information on South Texas Midday. I'm Rob Boskamp. Your community arts calendar and more is on the way.